94% of traders are about to mess this up and lose absolutely everything. War headlines, scary weird charts, quiet bull tweets, one bad click and you buy the top or sell the absolute bottom. Today you'll get the exact price where a real crash starts or ends. Why $104,000 Bitcoin can trap shorts and be very bullish. And the simple proof that whales are buying when everyone is panicking. As usual. I will show the ugliest charts and fear tweets on the screen so you would see for yourself what is happening. And at the end, we will talk about the part of the market that everyone is ignoring that can provide huge access, even in the short term. Stay till the end or risk becoming exit liquidity. No time to waste. Press the like button. Let's save your money before it's gone. James Sweeney is sharing the carefully operated party behind his accounts and all these scams that just happened recently. The Black Swan event is coming. Stable up. Buy the dip. Just in. Iran launches new wave of ballistic missiles toward Israel. It's a very interesting post because, to be honest, I have insights. The insights that I have is that the US will actually join the war versus Iran. And I do believe that short term, it might actually be causing some more pain. That's why mainly I would say personally, I'm slightly very short term. I would say over the whole setup on the market. Despite the fact I do believe in terms of the altcoins, if you actually accumulate on spot, like these are insane good prices, insanely good prices at this stage. However, once US will finally join the Iran war, I do believe that we might be seeing one final drop. Level I have, a level I'm thinking on currently is somewhere around $94,000, $96,000 for one Bitcoin. And for some of you, it might seem, oh, like it's so much and things like that. It's just a 10% move down on BTC. And honestly, I would say that altcoins, they're actually not saying something like this. Look at this total 3 chart in comparison to USDT. Like this thing just screams that we've bottomed. Like this is exactly the time where you want to be buying alts, right? And this is exactly the entry point because it still sustains multi-year trend since pretty much the lows of the bear market. June 11th in 2023, right? Absolutely insane. So see how greatly we dumped since the peaks of the previous cycle, right? And we assume that more liquidity will be present in crypto this time, mainly because Bitcoin is way higher and all this liquidity from Bitcoin eventually, I still do think that it will go some places we will finally find. And it's also interesting that even in the previous cycle, because many people would say that like this cycle is different and things like that, but even in the previous cycle, as they were not performing up until last 2 quarters of the peak price action on Bitcoin. There might be some speculation present that this cycle is slightly longer, mainly due to the fact that there is more institutional money out there and that like bull market will continue up until middle of 2026. We'd see about that. Maybe the end of this year would be absolutely crazy, but if you would look at this chart, this is insane entry level. We are 3.2x away from the absolute all-time highs for altcoins market cap in comparison to the previous cycle. And this is exactly somewhere where you're buying, because you're buying the global support, yes. We might deviate here, and following the things I just shared, following the insight I just shared, we honestly should be deviating there, because US entering war versus Iran, it will most definitely influence the markets out there, right? So we might be seeing that deviation, but this point of entry is absolutely insane. If you would essentially be market making this chart, if you would want to swipe the previous liquidity, you would probably want to push this chart at least to these levels, 475 and 455, to kind of sweep all the liquidity out there for people who are longing, because they have their stop losses below the previous lows. But anyway, in terms of altcoins, we are actually at the multi-year historical support, which is pretty insane if you would ask me. Lots of coming for 600K, but when you zoom out, it's hard to ignore the warning signs. I think it's not 600K, it's 60K in comparison, right? So a lot of people are essentially screaming about Bitcoin going to $60,000 due to the war and due to the things that are happening at this stage. And $60,000 is like a very nice level because it's around previous all-time high. Crypto copies, same things out there essentially. And you can see that even in the current cycle, we had a bunch of trading happening around these levels. So I would assume that if we're going to $60,000, I think the structure of the bull market breaks, most definitely, right? And after that, we probably are entering a long bear market after. I'm just not seeing people recovering from that like swiftly. The way this market works is that people essentially, they make money over the years of the bear market. Then with the first wave of hype, they join, right? And they just lose everything, right? They just lose all the money. And then they need some time back in order to make this money back as well. And some of them, they repeat the whole thing. Some of them, they play it better. They buy some assets in the bear market. Some of them, they absolutely make it, right? But the whole idea is that people would still need some time to actually make money to be re-entering properly if we are going from there. Like capital injections that I'm seeing here is essentially, I would say, three things. Bitcoin liquidity is coming to altcoins, right? Then more and more institutions and pension funds and governments essentially kicking off the race for Bitcoin out there. And then essentially real retail journey, right? Because through all of the distribution tops, I do remember in December, I was actually doing videos for you. It was weeks of bullish Bitcoin news. Trump Bitcoin that, this country Bitcoin that, and I was screaming to you from multiple videos. I was saying, guys, this feels like distribution to me. This feels like absolute distribution in terms of what is happening currently in terms of news of Bitcoin. Because at the time, altcoins, they just corrected heavily. They were like very much dead heavily, right? And Bitcoin at that levels, it was just staying comfy, close to the all-time highs. It was just a distribution pattern that was present there, right? So we'd see what would be happening here. We definitely have seen a bunch of altcoins pumping through the first wave. I would say it's like the chart of the market is present at this stage. Second wave is the time where true degeneracy essentially starts. In the last cycle, second wave, for example, pumped gaming coins, which are the most retailish coins out there. At this stage, they're not doing well. Since the end of 2023, not doing well at all. The best part about this bull market is that it's incredibly quiet right now. The average person isn't interested in crypto, even with Bitcoin sitting over $104,000. This is very bullish. I truly actually believe that, and I truly agree with this post. Why? Because you do understand that Bitcoin is way higher, which means that there is essentially way more liquidity in BTC. Because if you would want to push Bitcoin from $69,000 to $104,000, that's almost like the same amount of liquidities, if not even more, to push Bitcoin from $1,000 to $69,000. So currently, that's one of the storage of this liquidity that should be flowing somewhere finally. Obviously, most people who still hold Bitcoin at this stage, they're the ones that were able to hold. They had multiple times, they had multiple options to actually reallocate Bitcoin into some altcoins, to some shitcoins, but they survived, they held, they were benefited for it. Therefore, I would say that certain bias in terms of the survivor bias would be present there. What I essentially mean is that Bitcoin holders, they probably won't be shifting much into any underlying assets because the proven strategy for them thus far essentially was the fact that they just held, right? And only closer to the top of the whole thing, when altcoins will be already pumping like crazy, most of the upside for altcoins will be done already. They would essentially just decide to switch, probably, unfortunately, becoming exit liquidity because the time to do these things is now when it's perfectly uncomfortable, like it's at the top uncomfortable to actually be buying Bitcoin currently and buying into some altcoins. Altcoins that you just considered like absolute scams, which they kind of are. If you think about that, Bitcoin is just a giant meme coin scam, essentially, that people just pushed, right, as well. Because if no one would have supported it, it would be not this high as well. But at least it's honest, right? And I do believe that a range of Bitcoins, they actually like meme coins as well because meme coins are honest. They're not trying to portray themselves as some new technologies out there that are trying to change the world, as essentially a bunch of altcoins were. And what they did, they just stole the money and they just left right after. So it's very interesting. If you truly think about that, we have total 3 at the absolute support. It's crucially hard to be selling your Bitcoin in buying into altcoins. Plus, we have war FUD out there. And everyone is expecting for lower. People are calling for 60K. I just shared my marks in terms of where I do think we can go in terms of the lowest pricing. And I do think that based on these insights that I shared, that US will essentially be entering the war with Iran. This might be the last final drop out there. But I also recall situations that happened back in September, October, for example. End of September, start of October, everyone was thinking one last drop to $40,000 and then we continue from there. Guess what? The drop didn't happen. There was a correction in the start of October. Each and every influencer was actually screaming October, October. I was the only one who told you that at the start of October, we will see a correction. And right after, we will see new all-time highs in October. I was the only person in the world who said that. And that's exactly something that happened. No one was talking on this, right? I do believe current situation might essentially be quite similar in terms of people overestimating the reaction of the market because most of the things they're priced in, like insiders, they knew about the attack right away. They priced in like right away. And in the Middle East, like a lot of things were always happening in the Middle East historically as well. People are very focused on fear, on these like negative emotions out there, right? But we have to look through them. We have to see the true picture out there. I would say your downside at this stage, especially if you're on spot, is quite limited. Upside is very nice. Biggest upside, altcoins, from my point of view, by far, because memes, they're kind of moving along with Bitcoin, right? And memes definitely had the wave in the last 3 to 4 months. And there are like, personally, I only hold memes at this stage. I like most of my holdings are here on Ethereum currently, right? And essentially the idea there is that once majors will start to move, memes would obviously follow, but alts, they're absolutely beaten up, absolutely at the bottom. Everyone is screaming like, just think to yourself, when was the best time to buy Bitcoin? The best time to buy Bitcoin was when everyone was screaming that Bitcoin is a scam. I can show you something. Look at these guys. Crypto, the world's greatest scam. 7 million views. January 1st, 2023. What was January 1st, 2023? On Bitcoin chart. Here. It was the absolute peak of bottom. It was $16,800 for one Bitcoin. And that's exactly where you have crypto, the world's greatest scam. We can see the first comment update. Now that we are seeing the crypto market reach all-time high, notice that this is not driven by any sort of use or practicality. It is, as it always has been in the past, driven by price speculation. At that time, when he was posting, I think he's kind of apologizing that Bitcoin is like $70,000 already, but imagine how many people actually sold because of this video. It's absolutely insane. Like, what type of damage? 232,000 likes. This was the best time to buy crypto by far. It was the absolute peak of bottom. I assume that the current situation about altcoins is exactly like that at this stage. And this is pretty much the whole message. The whole message I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for watching this one. I shall be seeing you tomorrow. Stay healthy and rich.